Hi, my name is Chantal Epp and I'm the founder and CEO of Click and Clear. We deliver officially licensed tracks from the music industry to cheer and other performance sports worldwide. Just before we get started, if you only use completely bespoke music from a music producer that doesn't use any third-party licensed content, and you're only ever interested in using completely bespoke music, then this talk isn't for you, unless of course you want to understand how licensing works. If, however, you are interested in using popular music in your mixes and want to understand how, then please join me for this talk to learn more. Today, I'm going to talk to you about understanding music rights and how popular music is possible to license for your mix, and for event producers to also use the music in online videos and live streams. I strongly believe that coaches shouldn't need to worry about the inner workings of the music industry. So I'm here to help clear up some confusion, empower you and the whole cheerleading community, including music producers, event producers, and federations, to feel confident in making choices about your music, and hopefully teach you a little bit about music rights, why it exists, and how it can be used in your routine videos on the likes of Flow Sports and other video-on-demand platforms, or even on your own websites to help promote your team. What we want to see and are here to do is enable teams to use popular music, whilst also being able to share that online easily, knowing that the rights are cleared so you can continue promoting this incredible sport, growing participation in your teams, reaching more athletes worldwide, and doing what you do best. Music copyright is one of the oldest forms of copyright law, and so it can get pretty complicated and is sometimes a little bit outdated. But thankfully, due to new technologies and innovation, licensing for new uses is becoming achievable. I'm a music industry professional with a background in sync licensing. I've studied music my whole life, from playing instruments to studying music at school, and then taking a degree in commercial music at university. This course covered all areas of the music industry, from production to business to performing. And it was at university that I actually started cheerleading. I joined at the Freshers' Fair, later became captain and just fell in love with the sport. And it was here that I also learned how to make cheer mixes. My experience as a cheerleading music producer led me to creating mixes for Team England Paracheer, Team Netherlands, Team Jamaica, and so many more. After university, I went on to work in the music industry in sync licensing. Sync means putting music to video content. And the company I worked for was founded by Peter Gabriel from Genesis. At this company, I used to license music for film, TV advertising, but mostly online and digital content. So I've synced music for Spotify video series, such as an NFL series that they did where NFL players were talking about the music that they listened to before going out on the field. I've also worked with famous YouTubers like Veritasium, PewDiePie's girlfriend, and other online channels like Global Cycling Network. And then I also did some work with big brands like Soho House, Specsavers, and so on. I'm still also an active cheerleader. Some of you may know me as the flyer for Wheelchair Partner Stunt. I've been involved with Paracheer since 2017 after I competed in the ICU World Championships as part of the first ever Paracheer division with Team England. I now sit on a number of committees to help grow this part of our wonderful sport, and I'm also a trustee of Paracheer International, an educational body helping federations, coaches and athletes understand more about disability inclusion and how to adapt stunts. I really love this sport and have a huge passion for music as well. So together with my knowledge in music licensing, cheer music production, and as a cheerleader and coach myself, I was perfectly placed to create a viable solution for cheerleading and other sports in collaboration with the music industry to make popular music available legally, enabling all parts of the ecosystem to use and license music appropriately. As you know, music is an important part of cheerleading. It's a vital ingredient of any routine. It helps athletes stay on time, hypes up the energy in the room, gives the routine and team an identity, and gives something for the team to sing along to and really perform their heart out to. A music mix, as you know, is made up of edited and adapted music. Tracks are cut down, tempo shifted, combined with other tracks, can be used with voiceovers and sound effects, and teams then choreograph and perform their routine to the mix, with artistic interpretation often forming part of the judging criteria. And in some divisions, you'll be familiar with seeing musicality, which is specifically referenced in some of the score sheets. Music has a powerful effect on people's moods and attitudes. How many times have you listened to a happy song and felt really happy after it? Listening to music familiar with all athletes on a team helps enhance team spirit and promotes teams' social togetherness, which is so important in these difficult times. In some sports, certain songs can become associated with a particular team, and in cheerleading, certain songs become classic pyramid songs, right? Do you remember your first routine? What music were you using, and how did that make you feel? How would you feel if you could use your favourite song again in your team's routine? I personally always look for the lyrics in a song to help me convey a message that I want to share that season. But other teams look for themes. We've had warriors, superstars, superheroes. I mean, imagine a Top Gun routine with actual music from the movie. How amazing would that be? Studies have also found that when athletes know and love the music they're performing to, they will perform better, and the judges and audience will also respond more favourably too. Have you ever seen the audience start moving around and singing along to your mix? That is audience participation in action, thanks to the music. And after all, isn't that what cheerleading's about? Other benefits of music in sport includes improved endurance and athletic performance by reducing the perceived effort. When music is being played, whilst an athlete is training, they focus more on the music than what's happening to their body, and it tricks their brain into making them work harder and making them feel like they're not working as hard. Routines are also learned faster by promoting the formation of the required neural pathways. It can also calm an athlete to produce better performance. And more importantly, it can motivate an athlete to produce a better performance. Athletes can also block distractions to pre-visualize more easily and get into the zone during their performance. Music really helps them connect parts of the routine to certain parts of the music and brings that visualization into their heads before they go and compete. And as I've said before, music enhances team spirit and the bond between the team and the audience. And when the music is already known or loved by the athletes, the audience, or the judges, these effects are magnified. Imagine having a classic Britney Spears song for your dance section. That's going to get the whole crowd moving, and is now possible to license, by the way. So it's really important that we, as a young, growing sport, can use music to engage audiences, grow awareness, and increase participation numbers, and even more so in these digital/virtual times. For years, cheerleading has used popular music, and we still want to. But unfortunately, the music industry was just not set up to handle the licensing for this type of use, forcing teams to use music without a license. This causes huge problems in cheerleading and still does today. And the reason that there was no way to license music was really because the rights that we need for cheerleading teams and as music producers are very sensitive to the songwriters and recording artists who've written the music. And because we're changing and interpreting their work, they often require approval directly from the artists and writers themselves, which obviously isn't practical or cost effective when you think about the number of licenses needed and the typical team's music budget. Additionally, there are multiple ways in which music is being used and by multiple parties. So first, we have the team who selects the music, and they'll either make the mix themselves or ask a music producer to make a mix. That requires a license. They'll then perform to that mix at a competition where music is being played in a venue or maybe online. Again, that requires a license. And then finally, that performance is being recorded and may well be uploaded onto a video on demand service where there are paid subscribers, which again requires a license. Ultimately, music is being exploited in multiple ways, and copyright law says that artists and writers have the final say as to how their music gets used in each case. And it's not just cheerleading that has this problem, it's other sports too. And it's not just an American problem either. It's an issue around the world. As I've been building Click and Clear, I've found that other performance sports have either been sued or are receiving cease and desist letters, which is damaging their sport and stifling creativity. Some of those sports have turned to using music that is out of copyright, also known as music in the public domain, which I'll explain a little bit later. Other sports have created a limited catalogue of music that their teams can use at competition. But of course, that doesn't include popular music. As a music industry professional and a passionate cheerleader, I want all sports that use music as part of their performance to thrive through open and confident use of popular music that we all know and love, and the creators of that music can be remunerated fairly for their art, which is why I made it my mission to work directly with the music industry to create a huge catalogue of cleared music with all the rights needed in every part of the sport that can be licensed instantly at an affordable price. Yes, that's right, popular music is back legally. So now on to understanding global music copyright. Copyright law exists in most countries around the world. There are almost 180 countries that have signed the Berne Convention Treaty, which is administered by the World Intellectual Property Organization. This treaty sets a minimum set of standards for the protection of the rights of the creators of copyrighted works around the world. Many countries have also signed the Rome Convention Treaty, which sets the minimum sets of standards for protection of performers and producers. Usually, an individual or group of individuals who authored the work will exclusively own the work or copyright. The categories of works protected by copyright law include literary works, dramatic works, musical works, artistic works, sound recordings, film, and more. But we are here today to specifically talk about sound recordings and musical works, which leads nicely into the different sides of music. One of the most important things to remember when licensing music is that there are two sides of music rights. Master rights, which deal with the recordings and are typically represented by record labels on behalf of artists, for example, Sony Music. Then we have the publishing rights, which cover the lyrics, melodies, and written music, and are typically represented by music publishers on behalf of the songwriters, for example, Universal Music Publishing. Copyright is allowed to be transferred or sold by the copyright owner to another party. So in the music industry, artists, the master side, and writers, the publishing side, often exclusively assigned their rights to third parties, such as record labels, representing the master, and music publishers, representing the publishing. And they do this so that those companies can manage their rights, licensing, and collection of royalties, which is payment for their works through streaming, licensing, and other methods. And this is why artists and writers tend to require approval when it comes to the use of their music outside of the usual use cases of people playing music as created for personal pleasure. Those record labels and publishers don't own the music, they're simply representing the music. So in order to use a piece of music like we do in cheerleading, permission is required from all songwriters and artists of the songs. The author of the copyright has the right to authorize the use or prohibit the use of a work and set the conditions for its use. These rights typically include the right of reproduction, which means creating a copy. So for example, in Cheerleading, when you license a song, you're receiving the right to download that song and create a copy. And the service providing you with that copy will have a license to issue that copy. But you'll also receive the right to create copies of your mix to distribute between your team members. And that's a right that the service will be granting you specifically in your license agreement. This falls under reproduction. It's also often referred to as the mechanical rights. Then the right of distribution by way of tangible copies. That means selling, renting, or lending copies, both physical and digital. In Cheerleading, this relates to video content being created and distributed online, for example, Flow Sports or on Varsity TV. It also includes DVDs of competitions being made, which still happens in some countries. Then we have the right of communication to the public, which means playing the music in its natural form publicly, including public performance, public display, and dissemination over digital networks like the internet. So in Cheerleading, this includes performing to your mix in a venue, be it the training venue or at competition. It also includes the playing of music on an online platform or any other way of accessing that music publicly. If you have your own gym, you might be familiar with paying a license to your collecting society, and event producers running a competition will also be licensing this right from their local collecting society. Then we also have the right of transformation, including the adaptation or translation of a work. And in Cheerleading, this means the editing and adapting of music into a mix that accompanies your routine. And in order to do any of these things, permission or a license from all of the rights holders, both master and publishing, is required. In addition, many countries protect moral rights that typically apply to copyright. Now, moral rights refers to the idea that a copyrighted work is an expression of the personality and humanity of its author or creator. I always like to compare this to an example where an artist may be a vegan, but KFC or Chick-fil-A use their music on an ad without permission. Obviously, the artist wouldn't be too happy about their music being used on an advert advertising chicken when they're a vegan. So moral rights include the right to be identified as the author of a work, which means being credited, which of course the film industry do very well. Also includes the right of integrity, so the right to forbid alteration, mutilation, or distortion of the work, or derogatory treatment. This is really important because in Cheerleading, we alter the music. We're editing and adapting that music and using it in a different way than the copyright holder originally intended. And then finally, we have the right of first divulgation, making public of the work. Hence why leaked songs before release cause so many problems. And in some countries, moral rights can be transferred by the creator to a third party, so to the labels and publishers. But this is not always the case. And some of these rights do not expire in certain countries, unlike the rights to sound recordings and musical works. So as I said, copyright doesn't exist forever. The duration of copyright may vary from country to country, according to the type of work and the particular right in question, as we've just mentioned, moral rights. The Berne Convention, global treaty that I mentioned earlier, covers literary and musical works, basically the publishing. And that treaty sets a minimum duration of copyright in a musical work. But the general rule today is that copyright in literary, dramatic, musical, or artistic works lasts for the life of the last living author until the 31st of December of the year 70 years after his or her death, usually referred to as life plus 70. But this can differ in each country, and due to changes in copyright law over time, specific works may have differences in the duration of copyright, so when using music in the public domain, it's always best to do a lot of research. On the recording side, copyright exists for 50 years after the year of publication or release. and you'll often see that there are digital remastered versions of older songs which are re-released, so labels can continue to monetize the song after the original copyright has expired. On average, there are 9 writers on each hit pop song, and each of these writers are typically represented by a different publishing company, music publishers. You then have the record label who owns the master right, and this is usually owned 100%. Publishing rights, however, are more complicated because of the multiple writers involved. And annoyingly, due to all of these complexities, it's made the licensing of popular music a challenge in many different markets until now. The music industry have woken up to new ideas and are servicing new markets and now have ways for you to license popular music from the original artists instantly, whilst also enabling video-on-demand services or even virtual competition providers to get the rights that they need so no one needs to listen to a silent cheerleading video anymore. So now, let's understand the rights that we need for cheer. Firstly, the team or music producer making the mix needs the rights to edit and adapt music, combine it with other tracks, sound effects, voiceovers, beats, etc. Basically, create the mix. Then the team performing to that mix needs the right to set choreography to the mix, make up to 35 copies of the mix to distribute between team members for training purposes, and perform the routine in public, which is subject to the venue having a performing rights license, which can be obtained via your local collecting society. And if you own your own gym, you'll also need a performing rights license from your collecting society to cover the playing of music in your gym. It's also natural for us as sport performers to want to share a video of what we do with the music online, typically by uploading a video onto YouTube or Facebook. The music industry actually have direct deals with some of these social media platforms, which means they can monetize the music being used on your videos. You might be familiar with YouTube and Facebook's Content ID system, which recognizes when music is being used and often puts a copyright claim on it. These systems tend to give rights holders the option to either monetize the video, block the music being used in the video, or issue a complete takedown of the video. So you can upload your routine video online, it's just that you won't be able to monetize it. And if you want to monetize your routine video with the music, or use it commercially, for example advertising your team or a competition, then you'll need to purchase a sync license from the music rights holders or from a licensing service that have already pre-cleared these rights. And this will cost a little bit more than the standard rights that we mentioned earlier. Typically, if a video-on-demand service wants to play video content with the music, it'll be their responsibility to clear the rights on their platform. But if they don't know what music is being used at a competition, and the music isn't licensed for the adaptation rights in the first place, then that is an impossible task. So finally, the event producers running a competition need the right to play music in a venue, which is covered under a performing rights license from their local collecting society. If they wish to sell DVDs, USBs with video content, or other memorabilia, then they need a license to cover each of those items. They'll also need a live streaming license if they wish to broadcast a competition online on their own platform. And they'll also need a video-on-demand license, also referred to as an online sync license, in order to play that video content on a video-on-demand service. And finally, if a competition is to be broadcasted on TV, then a broadcast license is needed. And it's usually down to the content owner or the broadcaster to license the music being used in the footage they distribute. So you might be wondering a bit about virtual competitions. The rights needed for virtual competitions are still very similar to that of a live competition that is then reshared on a video-on-demand service. As a team, you and your music producer still need a license for the adaptation rights to create the mix and the right to choreograph them to the mix and distribute copies. And the event producer who's running the competition will need the sync rights to the music so they can upload the video on their platform. And they'll also need a performing rights license to cover the playing of the music on their online platform. So now we all understand the rights that we need, how do you actually go about licensing a song? Well, traditionally, you needed to research who owns the rights and then contact each and every record label and publisher who owns a piece of the pie, so to speak. And then you need to negotiate with them individually, and then a license will either be granted or denied. But this just isn't scalable from the music industry's point of view. They're really just set up to deal with the big ads like the Super Bowl ad, and not millions of licenses for tens of dollars. It's also a really complex process for teams who shouldn't need to be experienced in intellectual property licensing. And finally, it's incredibly time-consuming and expensive when most teams are on a quick turnaround with a limited budget. But there are some solutions in place now to cover some of the rights. So for example, collecting societies already license the performing rights for in-venue purposes and also online platforms, and they've been doing this for a number of years. Some of them can also issue live streaming licenses. However, this only usually covers a single country and only for the publishing side. The master rights for live streaming typically need to be cleared directly with every single record label whose music is being used. And can you believe that there's no global live streaming license? Part of the problem, as I said, is that the music industry just isn't set up to handle some of these types of licensing. But that is changing. And many record labels and publishers have now come on board to support a solution for cheerleading and other sports that covers every single right we need for our sport to distribute content to the public. So how do I know if my music is licensed for cheer? Well, I'd always recommend checking the license agreements that you receive for your music and make sure that both the master and publishing rights are being cleared for the use cases required. You can use completely bespoke music from a music producer that doesn't use any third-party content. You can use production music, which is cheaper or easier to clear music. And you can also use popular or original music licensed via a licensing service who represent the rights needed. And also, as I mentioned earlier, you can use music in the public domain. Just make sure you do your research in terms of when that work went into the public domain. So just to recap, we all love and use music in our routines. Using popular music positively impacts your athletes' performance, their ability to remember the routine, and better engages the audience. And there are now ways you can license popular music legally. In order to ensure you have all of the rights you need, remember that there are two sides to music. The master side, cleared by the record labels / the artist, and the publishing side, cleared by every single publisher / writer who owns a share of the song. In cheerleading, as a music producer, we need the rights to edit and adapt music into a mix. As a team, we need the rights to set choreography to the mix, create up to 35 copies of the mix for training purposes, and perform the mix in public, subject to a performing rights license. And if you own your own gym, you'll need the right to play music in the venue obtained via your local collecting society. As an event producer running a live or virtual competition, they need the rights to play music in a venue or on their online platform obtained via collecting society, sell DVDs or other memorabilia, live stream the event, sync music into online video content of the routines, and a broadcast license if the competition is being broadcasted on TV. I appreciate music copyright is complex, which is why it has taken some time for the music industry to offer a solution for cheer. But I hope I've managed to clear some things up and provide you with some valuable information so you can feel confident in making your music decisions and using popular music once again. If you have any questions or need any help, feel free to reach out anytime. Thank you.